Jonathan Kuminga should have played more in the fourth quarter last night. Okay. Should have played in the fourth quarter at all.
It's a hot take.
Yeah. Now, here's the question. So Steve Kerr is the problem? Is that what some of you have assessed? And I know some of you are nodding. But let's go. 888-957-9570. Is that where we've arrived? Steve Kerr is the problem.
Well, "the" is a big word.
If there was a different coach, things would be okay. Or things would be headed in the right direction. This is a genuine question. I'm not saying that I'm not here to listen to what everyone has to say about that. I want clarity. Is that what we're saying? Steve Kerr. We have watched now, what are they, 16 and 18?
Yep,
okay,
34
games.
Almost halfway there.
And we have assessed, and we have broken it down, and we have thought about things rationally, probably not rationally.
Never.
And we have looked at it through the lens of all the players, the organization as a whole, and we have arrived at the answer. Steve Kerr is the problem.
I think you're using the wrong word.
Okay.
It's not "the," it's "a."
Okay.
Steve Kerr is Steve Kerr a problem? Yes. Steve Kerr is a problem. And is he making these decisions based on what he thinks, what Joe Lacob wants, what Mike Dunleavy thinks, what Steph Curry thinks, and Clay and Draymond and the vets? Where does this come from? Because what we have is a team that has blown 5 leads?
I think 4.
4 leads of
18 or more, yeah.
Which is unconscionable.
Yeah, think of their record if they just win those 4 games.
Correct. And think about how many close games they've lost.
Mm-hmm.
And think about, Jonathan Kuminga, whether or not you think he should be talking or not, he is, and he should have played. And he said to us before that Moses Moody should have played. And his rotations are an issue. He doesn't seem to get it right. And it's easy to say when you lose games, but that's ultimately what it comes down to. And Steve knows that.
Sure.
When you win, then you don't get questioned. When you lose, you get questioned. And when you have a young player in Jonathan Kuminga who's playing great, and he played great last night, and then he doesn't play anymore, I'm not saying he was the best player on the floor.
Today is a day
he played really well.
Today is a day where everyone just calmly receive what I'm about to say, because he did. He looked good last night, and I like a lot of what we've seen this year, and it's already on Twitter that I hope he's not traded, okay? But there's a little bit too much. Jonathan Kuminga is a great player for my taste today. Jonathan Kuminga is in a certain spot in his development. He is 21 years old. Some of what we see is highly encouraging. That's how I would define Jonathan Kuminga. So a little bit too much for my taste of, you got a great player on the bench and you left him out.
I agree with that, but all I said, and this is where I'm going to hang my hat today,
okay.
He played great last night. And he played
really well.
He played the 9th fewest minutes of the 9 guys who got to play basketball.
It's odd.
That, to me, is beyond odd. It is unconscionable. I'm not going to say it's fireable, because Steve Kerr is unfireable. You can't fire Steve Kerr. He's not a coach that you can just fire over this or anything outside of a major, mega scandal. I look at this, though, and I think, what's going on? Why would Jonathan Kuminga only play 19 minutes when he played really well in those 19 minutes? And the team was doing well. And I know his excuse, or his explanation, I don't want to say excuse because that has a negative connotation. His explanation was Andrew was playing well and we built this big lead. And then, I felt like, it
had been a long time.
It had been a long time. So, and I understand it had been a long time if you're talking about a 38-year-old. But Jonathan Kuminga's 21. You could get him out of bed and give him 30 minutes, and he would be just fine.
Let's let everybody hear exactly what Kerr said.
Yeah, he was playing great, and his normal time to go back in would have been around the 5-6 minute mark. And Wiggs was playing great, and we were rolling. We're up 18, 19, whatever it was. And so we just stayed with him. And then at that point, it didn't feel like it was the right thing to do. He'd been sitting for a while, so I stayed with the group that was out there. Obviously, we couldn't close it out.
He had been out for a while is an unsatisfying answer. Yeah. Like, you're not going to get any argument from anyone with regard to Jonathan Kuminga should have been in the game in the fourth quarter at some point. No one's going to argue. Is anyone going to argue that? I don't think anyone's going to argue that today.
No, but the greater point, though, to me is why. Like, what is the root reason why Steve Kerr is not playing Jonathan Kuminga in these spots, and to a lesser extent, Moses Moody, why he got no minutes at all?
Why do you think?
Because he doesn't believe in Jonathan Kuminga or Moses Moody.
Okay.
Or the other part of it that we won't probably ever find out about, do the veterans not want to play with Jonathan Kuminga?
Well, I don't think that Steve Kerr has ever coached like a dictator. I don't think that's ever been that way.
Right.
So I think that the voices that you think have a voice in the room, they do. They do. So sure, Steph Curry, Draymond Green when active.
Right.
Clay is usually, my perception at least, and I think they've spoken to this, is usually just, he's kind of whatever. He's over there in the corner. He's not going to go in there and throw a clipboard. But I think Steph's got a big voice. I think Draymond's got a big voice. I think Kevon Looney's got more of a voice than we realize. I think others on the coaching staff and in the front office have a voice. So everything that you see out there comes from all of those voices. I don't think Steve Kerr makes those decisions by himself.
Right.
And I don't think, as we already detailed earlier this week, I don't think he's racist. I don't think he hates winning. I don't think he hates young people.
Exactly. I agree with all that.
I don't think he hates anything. I think he's got a philosophy that is maybe at odds with certain portions of the organization right now, and is definitely something with which we can disagree. But I do think that whatever he's doing, he has his reasons behind it. They may not be okay. They may not be working anymore. But let's acknowledge that when he's at a press conference, he can't say what the real reason is. That's what I feel. It's not that Jonathan was sitting too long. It's probably that even today, talent acknowledged, Steve Kerr probably doesn't feel great about Jonathan Kuminga closing games. Because at age 21, he's not going to be the most cerebral player on the floor.
Right. And your 35-year-old superstar was not your most cerebral player on the floor either.
He was not, but he's obviously earned that.
He sure has.
And so when you see, and Steiny asks a fair question, what the hell is Chris Paul doing on the floor? Well, that's probably what he's doing on the floor. Is
standing there watching.
He's 107 years old, and Steve's like, I trust him to know what we're trying to do. And this is the Warriors. They've reached a point where what they're trying to do doesn't really flow anymore with what the players can do. And that's the problem.
Right.
You either got old people who can't effectively run it anymore, or you've got young people who have the talent to do it, but they don't have the know-how to do it yet. And Steve still very much leans in the direction of those who can do it in their mind, as opposed to those who can physically do it but don't know what to do.
At the expense of victories.
To a fault, maybe. That is acknowledged and onward.
Well, and onward is an interesting thing to say, because you have 34 days till the trade deadline, and now Jonathan Kuminga, for the second time in 3 weeks, has made it known through his people and via Slates, who joined Steiny and Guru earlier in the day, talking about how he is no longer gruntled. He's now disgruntled again. So you're in a spot where Kuminga's not happy, and Moses Moody's getting DNPs against the defending champion in a 9-man rotation. And for what? So you can ride this thing out with the veterans till the end? Okay, well, what does that mean for the trade deadline in 34 days?
All right, so let's hear a little bit from Slates as far as exactly where we stand. Jonathan Kuminga and Steve Kerr. A couple things to play for you. Slates was on with Steiny and Goo. This is Slater saying that the Kuminga situation is motivated mostly by money.
The other thing that I think is mixed in here, this is huge. Like, this is an important financial moment in Jonathan Kuminga's life, right? He's extension eligible this summer. This is when you usually find out if you do or don't get that next big contract. And I just think with everything going on, and Steve Kerr mentioned it the other day, right? Remember when he was kind of hinting at personal agendas getting in the way, and then Klay Thompson did his press conference, so I think eyes were on him. But that wasn't just directed necessarily at one player, right? That was a locker room comment.
Okay, and the other thing is, can this be salvaged between Kerr and Kuminga?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I think there's a month till the trade deadline. I think there's a lot of question marks on the future of this team. A handful of players who I think we'll find out a lot more by the trade deadline, and we'll find out where this front office wants to take this thing. I think if Kuminga is playing steady, consistent minutes. I mean, he has started the last 11 straight games, but the one thing I will say about Steve Kerr is I do think the job this season is very challenging. The mix, the amount of players that should probably be in the rotation, but also the veterans that have earned it who aren't playing well. I mean, we've talked about it all year, but this is not an easy mix to coach, I would say.
I'm glad Slater said that right there at the end. That is one thing that is among all the things I feel today, that is definitely on the list.
Tough mix to coach.
Can all of you who have steam flying out of your ears, just for a moment, this is not an excuse, this does not mean that he's right or that he coached well last night, but can you acknowledge the difficulty that is on Steve Kerr's plate right now with what feels like 12 players who all have a case as to why they should be in the game more? And then think about what we always talk about in the NBA. What's the hard part? X's and O's or managing egos? What did Phil Jackson do well? X's and O's? Who cares? They got Kobe and Shaq.
The triangle.
Ball's going in the damn hole. There's nothing you could do to stop it. They're going to win a ring. But what did he have to do well? He had to give them books, and he had to manage their minds and their egos. Andrew Wiggins has been battling something seemingly off and on for a year. Draymond Green is emotionally sideways and unavailable. Klay Thompson seems to be going through a midlife crisis in terms of basketball at age 33. You got two young pups with their agents on line one round the clock right now. Can we not act like he's got obvious answers at every turn? Because he doesn't.
No, they're not obvious answers, but it's just not that difficult. It's not as hard as you're making it sound.
I think it is.
When a guy is playing well, you play him. And right now you've got 10 guys. You don't have 11. You don't have 12.
What
You've
if
got
7
10.
are playing well?
Well, they're not. And you get into the fourth quarter and you missed 11 of your final 12 shots as a team. So go ahead and make something different. Like take Kevon out, offense, defense, put Kuminga in, and Wiggins goes cold in the fourth. Put him in for Wiggins.
I'm not arguing that Kuminga should have gone in.
It's not as hard as the way you are laying it out, in my opinion.
Of course it is. Because
you've got egos, you've got young people. Just play the guys who are playing well. It's not as hard as you're making it seem.
And Wiggins was. And so were all of them.
And so was Kuminga.
Yes.
So play them side by side. Even though you don't think that can actually happen.
And it hasn't worked.
Instead, you ride with your fourth quarter lineup, and it's failing, and you stick with it. And it fails, and you stick with it.
12 times today that Kuminga should have played in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, of course.
But you can't ask him to predict the future and to say play the guys who are playing well. Well, that was more than 5 people last night. So what do you do?
Yeah.
And then
you play the guy who's playing great.
Then all of a sudden, they weren't playing well, and he didn't pivot. I acknowledge that.